This naturalrefrigerants.com article is being read by an automated voice. Illinois and New Mexico exclude F-gas refrigerants from PFAS laws. By Michael Gary, published September 5, 2025. A new law enacted by Illinois and a similar law passed in April in New Mexico, which both authorize significant regulations of PFAS, per, and polyfluoroalkyl substances, specifically exclude refrigerants that are deemed acceptable by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. Both Illinois and New Mexico use the scientifically endorsed definition of PFAS that includes many F-gas refrigerants such as HFO 1234YF and HFC 134A, as well as their atmospheric degradation product trifluoroacetic acid, TFA. Under that definition, PFAS, which are known as forever chemicals for their durability in nature and include more than 10,000 substances, contain at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. Other HFC and HFO refrigerants falling under this definition of PFAS include HFC 125, HFC 143A, HFO 1234ZEE, HFO 1336MZZZ, and HFO 1336MZZE, but not HFC 32. Exposure to longer-chain PFAS, such as PFOA and PFOS, has been linked to serious health issues including cancer, hormone disruption, immune system damage, and developmental problems in children. In animal experiments, exposure to TFA and ultra-short-chain PFAS has harmed reproductive and liver functions. At the federal level, the EPA under the Trump administration is attempting to roll back many environmental regulations. In May, the EPA said that it will delay enforcement on the drinking water limits for PFOA and PFOS until 2031, and it will rescind and reconsider the limits on 4 other PFAS. The EPA does not consider refrigerants, which have fewer carbon atoms, to be PFAS. However, at least 24 states use the PFAS definition that includes refrigerants, and many have enacted their own PFAS regulations. For example, Maine's updated PFAS law will ban the sale of certain refrigerants, foams, and aerosol propellants, as well as cooling, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and refrigeration equipment that contain intentionally added PFAS beginning in 2040. Minnesota, which passed one of the most aggressive PFAS laws in the U.S. in 2023, is engaged in rulemaking to establish a process to determine whether PFAS refrigerants and other products are essential to avoid prohibition in 2032. But this year, states that have passed PFAS laws like Illinois and New Mexico have excluded refrigerants from the bills as long as they are approved under the EPA's SNAP, Significant New Alternatives Policy Program. For example, the SNAP program has approved HFO 1234YF, which converts completely into TFA in the atmosphere for use in car air conditioning and other applications. In addition, the California State Legislature decided to narrow the scope of a pending PFAS bill, SB 682, to effectively eliminate F-gases. An emerging health threat. The Illinois PFAS bill, HB 2516, sponsored by Senator Julie Morrison and Representative Abdel Nasser Rashid, was signed into law on August 15th by Governor J.B. Pritzker. HB 2516 phases out the use PFAS in the manufacturing of children's products, cosmetics, intimate apparel such as sleepwear or underwear, menstrual products, and dental floss by 2032. PFAS contamination is an emerging public health threat that demands immediate action, said Morrison in a statement. Illinois is taking meaningful and measured action to prevent further harm by pushing the industry towards safer innovation. Neither Morrison nor Rashid responded to a query about why refrigerants were excluded from the bill. In New Mexico, House Bill 212, or the PFAS Protection Act, phases out consumer products with intentionally added PFAS. Starting January 1, 2027, products such as cookware, food packaging, dental floss, juvenile products, and firefighting foam are banned. On January 1, 2028, it expands to include carpets, cleaning items, cosmetics, fabrics, feminine hygiene products, textiles, ski wax, and upholstered furniture. By January 1, 2032, virtually all non-exempt products containing intentionally added PFAS are prohibited unless deemed a currently unavoidable use by the Environmental Improvement Board. The New Mexico Environment Department did not respond to a query about why refrigerants were excluded from the bill. California changes course. The chemical industry is known to have actively lobbied against the inclusion of refrigerants in other state PFAS bills. In California, the pending PFAS bill, SB 682, still would ban the sale and distribution of specific consumer products that contain intentionally added PFAS starting January 1st, 2027. But under the original version of the bill, starting January 1st, 2035, it would have more broadly prohibited the sale and distribution of any other product that contains intentionally added PFAS, including PFAS F-gases, unless it was determined that the use of PFAS in the product is a currently unavoidable or essential use. Bowing to industry pressure, legislators dropped the essential use portion of the bill and are proceeding with a straight ban of PFAS in cookware, cleaning products, juvenile products, food packaging, ski wax, and dental floss starting January 1st of 2028, said Anna Reed, senior scientist and director of PFAS advocacy at the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, who has worked with the legislature on the bill. "I have never seen industry opposition quite like this in my career," Reed said in a PFAS panel discussion at the Atmosphere America Summit 2025, held June 11th and 12th in Atlanta, Georgia. The conference was organized by Atmosphere, publisher of naturalrefrigerants.com. She later added that even though the scope is narrower than what we initially hoped for, it is still a very good step forward to not have PFAS in these consumer products. Last year, California's legislature considered a bill, SB 903, that was similar to SB 682, but was not passed, in part because of perceived costs associated with it. In 2022, California enacted PFAS regulations with a narrower scope, AB 1817 and AB 2771, which banned the sale and distribution of PFAS-containing textile articles and cosmetic products, respectively, beginning January 1st, 2025. SB 903 also faced considerable chemical industry opposition. To counter that, proponents of SB 682 obtained the support of the American Sustainable Business Network, ASBN, and the California Association of Sanitation Agencies. Reed noted that in the U.S. there have been multiple efforts at the state level, some successful, to redefine PFAS to exclude F-gases from regulations, either by changing the definition of PFAS or through an outright exemption. The easiest way to get out of the class-based approach to regulating PFAS is not be considered a PFAS at all, she said, adding, "We really need to leave the definition of PFAS based in science." Minnesota's essential use approach. Minnesota's 2023 PFAS bill is known as Amara's Law in honor of Amara Strand, a young woman who advocated for the bill and spoke at the Minnesota legislature in March 2023, a month before losing her fight with cancer linked to PFAS. The bill has already, starting this year, banned PFAS in 11 categories of new consumer products, including carpeting, cleaning products, children's products, dental floss, and cookware, sold or distributed in Minnesota. Minnesota's Department of Health, MDH, has also initiated a toxicity review of TFA, one of the first such governmental reviews to take place in the U.S. Unlike California, Minnesota has kept a provision to ban PFAS products, including refrigerants that are not considered essential by 2032. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, MPCA, has been engaged in rulemaking is to establish criteria it will use to determine which, if any, uses of intentionally added PFAS will qualify as currently unavoidable uses, because they are deemed essential for the health, safety, or functioning of society. In the case of F-gas refrigerants, many could be considered not essential because there are safer natural refrigerant alternatives. However, industry representatives have engaged in fear-mongering about whether banning F-gases would mean we're not going to have refrigerators, said Ivana Stark, Minnesota State Director of Clean Water Action, CWA, a Washington, D.C.-based NGO, in an interview in January. CWA was instrumental in passing Amara's Law. So we really had to educate people on what were the safer alternatives, what was happening within the realm of refrigeration. Industry representatives also argued that chemicals like HFOs are safer than higher GWPF gases. But they're not telling the whole truth on what happens with HFOs when they break down into TFA, Stark added. And so we did a lot of educating of legislators around what HFOs are, how they're used, what happens when they break down, and how they get into our water. A small group of Republican lawmakers have taken to social media, pledging to dismantle Amara's Law, Clean Water Action reported on its website in January. We're seeing a flurry of exemption requests, attempts to change the definition of PFAS, and various tactics to delay implementation, Stark wrote in a blog. In the end, the question will be whether certain F gases and other PFAS are needed, and there are no other safer alternatives, she said. In comments to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the American Chemistry Council, a trade group, said it opposed the concept of unavoidable uses and argued that it would establish requirements for hundreds of companies to file for exemptions to sell basic products across Minnesota, including refrigeration and HVAC. Regarding the potential toxicity of TFA, the fluorochemical industry often points to the UN Environment Program, UNEP, and its 2022 Environmental Effects Assessment Panel, EEAP report. The report says that TFA is not bioaccumulative, is not expected to pose significant risk to humans or the environment at the present time, and is unlikely to cause adverse effects out to 2100. At the same time, the report added that monitoring of the environment for residues of TFA would provide an early warning if trends in concentration indicate rapid increases. Other regions have taken a precautionary approach to F gases and TFA. Since 2023, the European Chemicals Agency, ECHA, an agency of the EU, has been evaluating a proposal from the national authorities of Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, and Sweden to restrict PFAS, including F gases and TFA. In Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada, ECCC, a federal agency, has invited interested parties to submit comments on the content of its latest PFAS report, which uses the PFAS definition that includes F gases and TFA.